All right, so now I'm going to be doing my seeding predictions for the Eastern Conference. If you didn't see my predictions for the Western Conference, go check out that video. But now let's get into the East. And for our 15th seed is the Detroit Pistons. Now, I could be underrating the Pistons, but I just have a lot of questions about Detroit. There was a point in time where I considered them to have one of, if not the best young cores in the NBA. I don't know if I'm still quite there. There was a point in time where I thought Cade was going to be a top 10 player in the NBA. Not saying Cade can't still do that. I'm nowhere near as confident as I once was in that take. He's been pretty good when he plays, but, he struggled with a lot of injuries. We're going into year 3 now. Usually by year 3, I have a pretty good understanding of what a player is going to be, especially when they're picked first overall. But I still have a lot of questions about Cade. And there's definitely some other good pieces on this team. You have Jalen Duren, which I think that he was the steal of that draft. I'm shocked that Charlotte didn't keep Jalen Duren because, he's been incredible. They obviously took Jay Nivey. I think he had a bit of a hit or miss rookie year. He didn't exactly light it up, but he wasn't terrible either. But it's usually harder for the guards to, adapt into the NBA. But I don't know what to do with Detroit. I know that they brought in Monty Williams, but Monty Williams, kind of wore out his welcome in Phoenix. I don't exactly know what he's going to do here with the Pistons. But like I said, I could be too harsh on Detroit. I don't know enough about, I'm not confident in them. And as the 14th seed, I have the Washington Wizards. This team was bad with Bradley Beal and Kristaps Porzingis. So do you really think they're going to be good without those two guys? Like, Bradley Beal's better than Jordan Poole, and Kristaps Porzingis is better than Tyus Jones. And they were bad last year with those two guys. So I think they're going to be really bad this year. I think Jordan Poole individually is going to have some fun nights. He just dropped whatever that was. I think it was like 40 points or so in 3 quarters in that preseason game. So you're going to have a lot of microwave explosive games from Jordan Poole this season because it's essentially his team. I just don't think they're going to be very good. So the storyline is going to be Jordan Poole. How's he blossoming on his own there? And he really was good when Steph Curry was off the floor. So you can't just call him a product of Steph. So I'm interested to see how he does, but overall, I don't think this is a very good team. For the 13th seed, we have the Charlotte Hornets. This is a team that has nice pieces, but they can just never seem to put it together. I don't know exactly the reason behind it. They don't seem very well managed. They dealt with obviously big injuries to LaMelo last year, which it hurts because LaMelo is the franchise. So hopefully he's able to stay healthy this year. Really interested to see how Brandon Miller does. His draft stock exploded, and I really think he can be a great versatile player. So I'm excited to see him and LaMelo play together. But outside of those two, there's just a lot of question marks. Terry Rozier, Gordon Hayward, your vets. I don't really know what to expect from those guys. I don't even know if they're going to finish the season on the team. Mikal Bridges is back. I think it's a poor decision to bring him back, but they decided to do it. I think he's already been arrested again, so I don't know what's going on with that. P.J. Washington. I like P.J. Washington. They're trying to play him at center, though. I don't love that. It's just a weird team, they have some talent, but they're just never quite able to put the pieces of the puzzle together. So I don't really count on this year being any different from that, so that's why I have them at 13. And for the 12th seed, I have the Orlando Magic. There's stuff that I really like about the Orlando Magic, particularly their 2 young wings. Paolo Banchero is an absolute stud. The fact that he averaged what he averaged as a rookie, he already looks like a grown man. He's a monster. I think Paolo is going to become one of the best players in the NBA because he was already so good as a rookie this past year. Just looked so poised and comfortable with taking over games. Franz Wagner is a really good player in his own right, very versatile. And then you have some other nice pieces on this team. Cole Anthony seems to kind of have come into his own. He's a nice scorer, packs a nice punch there. I've always been a big Wendell Carter fan, so I like him. But it's still a very young team. Overall, it's a pretty young team, and I just think that they're a couple years away from really competing for a playoff spot. But they're always going to be fun to watch just for Paolo. And as our 11th seed, we have the Toronto Raptors. It feels weird to say this about a Masai Ujiri team because he's one of the best GMs in the NBA, but I don't like the construction of this roster at all. I think it's constructed very poorly, specifically in the fact that your three best players are kind of the exact same player. OG Anunoby, Scotty Barnes, and Pascal Siakam. They all do the same stuff. And it's kind of weird that you're playing all three of them. They all overlap, have the same skill styles. You should have moved OG last trade deadline. We've seen, I think the Grizzlies offered 4 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges. So you're telling me OG Anunoby wouldn't go for 2 or 3 first-round picks? He's a pretty similar player. He's not as good as Mikal, but he's in that same mold. Does a lot of the versatility stuff that Mikal does. So I think you could have got a haul for OG this past past deadline, and he's already made it clear he doesn't want to stay with the Raptors. He said he's going to test free agency. I just don't really get the point of this team. And I think Scotty, I'm not trying to bash him or anything, but I feel like the trajectory of his career has been weird because when he started off as a rookie, I thought he was going to be incredible. He had a really strange sophomore year where he just didn't improve really in any way. You could even argue he kind of regressed a little bit. So they're weird. I know they added Dennis Schroeder as well, which is good, but it's definitely a downgrade from Fred VanVleet. So, I like these players. I think the construction is extremely clunky. They still haven't really been able to find a solid starter. I know that they brought in Jakob, but I don't know. They just don't really have any quality center play. I mean, Jakob's good in stretches, I guess. But overall, I don't think this is a very good team. And I'd have to look it up right now. I don't even know who their head coach is because Nick Nurse is in Philly now. So I don't even know who's coaching the Raptors right now. Let me know in the comments. And for our 10th seed, we have the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls are kind of a tragic tale. Back when they had Lonzo Ball playing, they were one of the most fun teams to watch in the entire NBA. Good stretch of the 2021 season. They were the first seed in the East. And like I said, they were just a great time to watch. However, since then, since Lonzo's gotten hurt, this has just not been the same team. Very stagnant. They've struggled to really get high-end point guard play, and it kind of just feels like Zach LaVine and DeMar throwing the ball around. I don't think Vucevic fits this team at all. I think Wendell Carter would actually be a far superior fit on this team than Nikola Vucevic. So I think the roster, again, similar to Toronto, it's kind of clunky where your best 2 players, they kind of do the same thing. DeMar and Zach LaVine, they're both like isocentric ball handlers that can create their own shot. I wouldn't be, if I were the Bulls, I would just have a fire sale because this is the type of team that is going to just be stuck in purgatory. It'd be one thing if Lonzo is coming back. I'd be surprised if Lonzo, even if he gets back to playing in an NBA game, which is kind of a long shot at this point in time, is he going to be anywhere near the form of himself that he once was? I have a hard time believing that. So it's sad. But if I'm the Bulls, I would just blow it up. I know it's hard to do. You just went through a rebuild. You were good for, half a season. But this team is clearly so far away from getting a Larry O'Brien. And for our 9th seed, we have the Brooklyn Nets. This is essentially just a collection of high-end role players. And these teams, they tend to be competitive. This team definitely reminds me of the 2019 Clippers, before they got Kawhi and PG. They were just a collection of nice role players. With this team, you have Mikal, obviously, is the jewel of this team. And, again, I mentioned him earlier about how, a lot of picks would be thrown around for him. That could potentially happen again this year. I would not be surprised at all if teams are trying to trade for Mikal. And it would make sense for Brooklyn to trade him just because he's not good enough to lead your team, be like your franchise player, but he is really good, and he could fetch you a lot of assets, especially for those competing teams. And you have Cam Johnson, another great role player, catch and shoot type of guy. Spencer Dinwiddie, I like a lot. He's a really good microwave guy, can go off at any point. Nick Claxton had a massive improvement this past year. Has become one of the best defensive players in the NBA. So there's a lot of nice pieces on this team, but they don't have the the centerpiece to really take them all the way. We know that they made the playoffs last year, but that was kind of a fluke because it was Katie and Kyrie for half the year. That's why they were able to make the playoffs this past year. I'd be surprised if they actually made the playoffs this year just because they're kind of lacking that high-end talent, but not a terrible team. And for our 8th seed, we have the Atlanta Hawks. So the Hawks, they've had a kind of a weird run over the past couple of years because back in 2021, they made it to the conference final, which nobody, myself included, had them going that far. They took the eventual champs to 6 games. Looked like their future was bright. Looked like they had one of the best young cores in the entire league. Then the 22 season happens, extremely disappointing. They then make the big trade for DeJounte Murray, bring him in for this past year, and again, they're disappointing. So I don't know exactly. Like, I know that they brought in Quinn Snyder. They gave him a big deal. I don't know what to make of Atlanta because on paper, they look like they should be a good team, but I've said that for the past 2 seasons now. So I kind of have to start looking more at reality as opposed to what I think in my head about this team. I really like Trey. I thought Trey and DeJounte were going to be like the perfect complementary pieces for each other because, you know, DeJounte can make up for Trey's lack of defense. And they have a nice collection of young forwards. I guess I just overrated their individual talent. But yeah, I think they're just one of the more disappointing teams of the past year. And for our 7th seed, we have the Indiana Pacers. I like a lot about the Pacers team. I've never been a big Rick Carlisle guy, but I completely forgot that he was here until, you know, I was looking at the stuff earlier. So you have him in place. He's won a championship, obviously. And then the personnel on this team, I really like. Obviously, Tyrese Halliburton making his first All-Star team this past year. I think he's one of the most creative playmakers in the league. Definitely one of the better passers. Benedict Mathurin got off to an insane start to this past year. He looked like the best rookie. Then he kind of cooled off, but he was still just overall great last year. And then you have just some nice other. I mean, Miles Turner, it feels like he's always going to get traded, but the crazy thing about Miles Turner, too, is he's still, like, relatively young. It feels like he's been in the NBA forever, but he's still only, 25 or 26 years old. So I think this is going to be a fun, exciting team. They're going to run the floor. Obviously, they got Obi Toppin the past year. I just think they're going to be an exciting team, and I expect a big year from Tyrese. For our 6th seed, we have the reigning Eastern Conference champion Miami Heat. So I feel like they're one of the more difficult teams to rank for the regular season because remember last year, they were the 8th seed. They made it to the finals as an 8th seed. They weren't very good in the regular season. And I haven't been, it's not that I dislike the Heat or anything. I just personally, I don't like the construction of the roster at all. Because they struggled before they got Kevin Love. They literally didn't have a starting power forward on the roster. I know they have Kevin Love now, but I don't really know how much gas Kevin Love has left in the tank. He's a complete liability on defense now. He was never really a great defender. Now he's just terrible. And I feel like this Heat team, it just asks too much of Jimmy Butler. Obviously he's done it really well, but it's not sustainable. That's why you don't see Jimmy Butler play like that in the regular season because it's not a realistic thing to ask of one player to do all the stuff Jimmy does. So that's why I think you've seen the Heat overachieve in the playoffs is because Jimmy, when he's fully engaged, he's one of the best players in the league, but he's not going to do that on a night-in, night-out basis. Bam, I'd like to see more development from Bam. I think this is kind of what Bam is. He's a really good player. I just personally wish that he would have grown more on the offensive side of the ball, particularly his three-point shooting. He just doesn't even attempt threes. And this team, I don't think they were very talented last year outside of Jimmy and Bam. They found a way to get worse, too, because they lost Max Strus and they lost Gabe Vincent. Those were kind of crucial role players on their run to the finals this past year. So as long as Jimmy and Bam is going to be there, they're going to be a competent team, but I don't think they're among the elite teams in the East. For our 5 seed, we have the team that was the 5 seed last year, the New York Knicks. They did make some slight improvements to the roster. They did bring in Dante DiVincenzo, another Villanova guy, to add to this team. That's now 3 Villanova players they have with Brunson, Hart, and now DiVincenzo. So I like that. I think DiVincenzo is going to fit in incredible with the Knicks. Thibodeau's culture of the defense and being scrappy and all that. He's going to fit in great. Obviously, Jalen Brunson bringing him in the past offseason. I was actually more critical of the Knicks for doing that because I just personally thought that they they gave him too much money. But it turns out I was completely wrong about that because Jalen Brunson was incredible. I mean, he made my top 25 players list. I think he was the best player to not be an all-star this past year, and I think he will be an all-star this year. It's just night and day. The Knicks team, before they got Brunson and now after getting him, he just adds so much more to this team in terms of his leadership, his mentality, all that. And then you still have Julius Randle, who made the all-star team again this year. You still have R.J. Barrett, who seems to, slightly improve his game every year. So the Knicks, they're a nice, stable team who could win a playoff series. I don't think they're good enough to win a championship, but they're a respectable team. Number 4 is the Philadelphia 76ers. I don't know what to do with Philly. This whole James Harden situation it gives me a migraine thinking about it. I'm someone who's defended Harden for years now. And on this channel, I've defended him. But this whole situation, I just don't even want to talk about it. It's just so nauseating even thinking about this mess that's going on with this James Harden saga. Just for the purposes of this video, I'm going to say James Harden just plays the year with Philly. It's looking unlikely, but for this video, I'm just going to assume he comes back. You have the reigning MVP in Joel Embiid. Absolute monster. I think him and Giannis, they're the two most unstoppable physical specimens in the NBA. Joel Embiid, he's incredible. Really reminds me of Kobe Bryant. I think that he does have a bit of that Kobe in him. Just in his post-game, his fadeaway looks identical to Kobe. He's the perfect modern-day big man. He can do it all. So as long as he is on the floor and playing, you're going to have a chance to win any game just because he's that good. And the supporting cast around him, I think, is pretty good as well. Tyrese Maxey, I'm expecting a big year from him. Tobias Harris can be hit or miss, but he was pretty good last year. PJ Tucker, I think, fits well with this team. Same with Melton. So I like the team. I just wish the Harden mess wasn't happening, and I'm giving the Sixers points as well for finally getting rid of Doc Rivers. I think he was a large. There were things that Doc did that were good. I think that he helped Embiid develop more into like a physical player, but overall it was time for Doc to go. I'm glad they did that. They brought in Nick Nurse, who is a championship level coach. So Philly, I want to say they're an elite team, but I just don't know what the Harden thing, so I'm putting them as the 4th seed. So on paper, the Sixers are probably better than the Cavs, but like I said, the James Harden thing, I don't know what to do with Philly. So number 3, the 3 seed, I have the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm really high on the Cavs. Donovan Mitchell is one of my favorite players in the league, so I might be a little more biased towards them, but Donovan, I feel like at least for the first half of last year, he definitely had a part in the MVP race. It didn't really seem like he got much talk or any buzz for being in the MVP race, but I think for the first half of last year, he really was that good. You go back and look at how great he was. Even when Garland was out, he was playing point guard, and he was thriving in that role. This is one of the best backcourts in the entire NBA. Garland, Mitchell, one of the most skilled backcourts in the league. You combine that with their front court. Jared Allen, arguably the best defensive player in the NBA. Evan Mobley is incredible as well, and he's going into year 3. I'm expecting a monster year from Evan Mobley. So they have really good high-end talent. You can maybe poke some holes in their depth, and their bench isn't great, but when you have the high-end talent that they do, it doesn't worry me as much. And they did bring in Max Strus. If he's able to play as well as he did in the playoffs, then that's great. Just add more shooting. They could even play him at the 3 maybe. So I'm really high on Cleveland. I expect big things from them. I think that they're one of the teams that they get a couple breaks in their way. They're in the NBA Finals. And for the 2 seed, we have the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, there's a lot of newness with the Milwaukee Bucks. They have a brand new head coach. They have a new starting point guard, obviously, in Damian Lillard. So there might be a bit of an adjustment period. However, I'm not worried about that at all. I think Giannis and Dame is going to be the best duo in the entire NBA. Their skill sets complement each other perfectly. You have one of the best perimeter players to ever play the game. Combine that with one of the best interior players to ever play the game. This is going to be one of the most fun teams to watch. And on top of that, usually a team gets gutted after trading for a guy like Dame. You still have really nice pieces outside of them. You still were able to keep Chris Middleton, who's made multiple All-Star teams, has been a crucial part to the Bucks team. Brook Lopez is still here, who was, I think he finished 2nd or 3rd in Defensive Player of the Year voting last year. To still have him with his versatility and his shooting alongside Giannis. You brought in Malik Beasley. You have a Pat Connaughton, Like there's real depth around Dame and Giannis. I think they're going to be an incredible team to watch, but I think that there's going to be one better team. I think the Milwaukee Bucks, they're obviously thrilled about getting Damian Lillard. Of course, anytime you can get a guy that good, you do it 100 times out of 100 times. However, I think that they're kicking themselves that Jrue Holiday ended up on the Boston Celtics. I mean, out of all the teams Jrue Holiday could have gone to, it has to sting the fact that he landed on Boston. Because this is, if everything plays out right, this is probably going to be the Eastern Conference Final, Boston versus Milwaukee, and it's gonna suck for Milwaukee having to play, their guy. Jrue was their guy. He was a crucial piece to winning that championship. Adding that now to the Boston team. I mean, you could argue that Boston has the best starting five in the entire NBA. Now, I know that you can definitely do different variations, but it's some combination of Jrue Holiday, who was an all-star last year, Jaylen Brown, who was an all-star last year, Jason Tatum, who was an all-star last year. Al Horford has been like the Renaissance man. He's the do-it-all guy. He's been incredible, especially at his age. Kristaps Porzingis, a former All-Star, coming off one of his better seasons of his career from last year. He provides all kinds of versatility for this team. And then you also have Derek White, one of the best perimeter defenders in the entire league, just made first-team All-Defense. I mean, there's just so many different options. I know you can argue, like, towards the end of their bench, it definitely gets thin. I'm not worried about that. You have Tatum, Brown, Jrue Holiday. I mean, that is incredible because, they struggled in the past with, I feel like they have struggled in the past with kind of getting more passive and not really having a good flow to their offense. Jrue Holiday is going to fix that pretty quickly because as much as we talk about the defense, he's a clear leader on the offensive side of the ball as well. So that has been my seeding for the East. Cannot wait because tomorrow is the start of the NBA season. So let me know your thoughts on this. Thanks for listening.